Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Earthy Headlines. Today I'm going to try out this new camera or setup type thing, the visual. I thought it was just weird that I was in a corner all the time. We'll see if this works out better, if you can see like my face better. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about the Cyclades and early Cycladic society, which is, just to give you guys a visual, here these are the Cyclades islands. And this is the Aegean Sea, this is Greece, and this is Constantinople or Istanbul, not Istanbul, Byzantium, and this is Turkey, right across on the right. The reason why I want to talk about this article is because there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with not only what's been discovered there, but also just the surrounding area and some of the some useful information in terms of Neolithic and the early Bronze Age. So anyway, so just keep this in mind that these are the islands basically littering the southern Aegean, or south of the Aegean rather, between Greece and Turkey. The first thing that they found was they went to this, and when I say they, I mean the people in charge of this 4-year excavation. And I think the 4-year excavation was a continuation of a previous excavation from like 2011 or something. So technically they've been there for a while excavating this stuff. And if you know anything about Crete, which, let me pull up the map again, which is down here, this island down here, they were home to the Mycenaean culture and the Minoan culture. And especially the Minoans, there's very little that they concretely know about them, except that they had large trade networks, and a lot of their pottery, the Mycenaeans rather, a lot of their pottery and ceramics were found as far as Egypt and in Asia and in parts of Europe as well. So they've been around. Their hallmark has been around and corroborated in other sites. They conducted research on this island, Keros, in the Cycladic islands I just showed you, and basically they confirmed the existence of a complex, stratified, and technically expert society. And we'll get into this implications of that in a second. So a little bit about Keros. Keros was a significant regional center for all the Cycladic islands. So if you think of them as an island nation, they would have been a very one of the central power points rather of the entire island nations. So that would mean a bunch of things: commerce, center of culture, probably some type of government, something like that, where that is very impactful to the population that was living there. Greece's Ministry of Culture said at the conclusion of the research program under Cambridge University. Here's a picture of the site. It's beautiful, by the way. Jeez, look at the water. The program has revealed impressive architectural remains of a significant early Cycladic settlement. So, just some background information. So, Neolithic Greece goes back around 7,000 BC or so about 9,000 years ago. That is supposed to be the Neolithic cultures, or whatever, the populations of that time, are supposed to be the populations in the wake of the flood, or the Younger Dryas event, this cataclysm event. And the early Bronze Age, which is about 3200 BC, so a little over 5,000 years ago, they're basically the continuation of culture. So that we have this little gap between the Neolithic and the Greek Bronze Age that's very much unclear. And I'm not talking about Sumer or anything like that. I'm talking about just within the region of Greece here. And one interesting thing about the Aegean was before 4000 BC, so 6,000 or so years ago, there was a distinctive Neolithic culture amalgamating Anatolian, which is Turkey right here, and mainland Greek elements arose in the western Aegean before about 6,000 years ago, based on different types of stuff that they excavated. So the western Aegean here is pretty much Greece, right? So how did that happen? How did they have these combined Anatolian and traditionally Greek traits combine? Well, if you look at the map, it seems pretty self-explanatory, right? I mean, these islands are pretty much stepping stones to and from Greece and Anatolia. And the fact that they had boats, or they were able to travel at least the Aegean Sea, is not out of the realm of possibility, because I'm not even talking about the Polynesians 3,000 or so years ago. This predates that, and the Egyptians had boats, and it's just not. It's not compelling to me to say that there is no such thing as seagoing vessels when you see all these populations in these different islands here, and it just doesn't make sense. So I'm just assuming that they had some sort of seafaring capabilities here, and if that's the case, then it's interesting when we go forward in this article to keep in mind that there was a Neolithic culture, a very unique one, that basically were the uniting in one way or another of these two people. I'm talking about Anatolian and the Greek people. Okay, so on with the article here. So, under the project, excavations were carried out on the small islet of Daskalio, originally connected to the nearby site of Kavos on Keros through a narrow strip of land. I'm assuming that narrow strip of land is submerged now. The date of the early Cycladic was confirmed scientifically, and the remains of the culture at the time include impressive staircases, drainage pipes, and stone buildings that reveal an advanced urban architecture without precedence for the specific period. Okay, this is supposed to be dated the early Cycladic, so 5,000 plus years. And I say this time and again, these buildings and drainage pipes and this very complex organization, or rather these complex constructions that required organization, are alive and well at the time of 5,300, 400 years ago. So where did they learn that? Did they invent that? Did they come up with everything like that? Or were these ideas sort of like a meme through time that was passed down through their culture and through the generations? Because again, we're talking about Anatolia. Anatolia is like the cradle of not only civilization, but these civilizing ideas of agriculture, religion, and just living on Earth and getting by without living the hunter-gatherer type of life. So, and when you think about Crete as well, how mysterious this place is and how so much came out of here, and they were not a warlike, I mean the Cretans rather were not, or the Minoans and the Mycenaeans were not, at least for the great majority of their existence, they weren't warlike, and there's nothing signaling that. So it seems like they were living 5,000 plus years ago in a time of relative peace, and going on, well, as we read the article, you'll see that they must have had extensive trade routes. So if you're trading, then you're probably not warring, and you're probably communicating, and with that comes a bunch of stuff, exchange of information, culture, ideas, all that stuff, techniques, methods of subsistence living, trade, all of that stuff is going on at that time. And the fact that it still remains to this day is a testament to how, what would you call it? Not fortuitous, how prosperous the whole area must have been, these island nations here. So here's some of the pottery that they found. Very interesting stuff. This is well over 5,000 years old, and it's still in pretty good shape for being, millennia old. So some of the stuff that they found was a path leading to the top of the settlement, terraces created to support buildings. So they had this very complex and effective architecture for supporting, like building support for buildings that they had made out of stone and marble and stuff like that. The complicated, interlinked, and multi-level architecture shows the existence of a well-organized and well-built settlement on a steep promontory. So yeah, here's some of the pictures here provided by the Greek Culture Ministry of Antiquities, and you can see this is, in its heyday, it must have looked beautiful, because right now this is like they had to dust it all off, and it looks worn, and who knows how long, because they can't carbon date the stone. Who knows how long all of this this infrastructure has been in on the island for it could have very well been thousands of years before this civilization. The Discalio buildings were mostly made of good quality marble from Naxos Island, which is 10 kilometers north of Keros. So again, in order to transport marble, which is pretty heavy, and enough marble to build some of these buildings, they had to have boats. There's no way they drug it across on the back of a dolphin or anything like that. They had to have not only boats, but like almost an organized fleet, trade ships and stuff like that, because no one's gonna what other reason would they have to transport a shitload of marble and building materials to another island? That just doesn't add up. According to co-excavator Colin Renfrew, Discalio indicates that the building techniques that were applied, the existence of huge entrance gates, stone ladders, and the drainage pipes throughout the island show that there must have been a specialist architect and a central administration to carry out the building program. What do we need to have those things, to have a central administrator? You need to have, first of all, you need to have the concept of an administration. You need to have the concept of architecture. You need to have ideas. There's no way that they just had a think tank of hunter-gatherers or even farmers and they thought of this out of nothing. I mean, this is something that has to be refined and proven over thousands and thousands of years. Trial and error, all that stuff they had to get out of the way before they could come together and agree that this is how they were going to build things, this is how they're going to run everything. So again, we're close to Asia Minor, we're close to Anatolia. We think about the Apkallu, these civilizing figures. Even in South America, Quetzalcoatl, they all have the same parallels going for them. And it may not just be farming and agriculture, although that's probably the biggest thing and the most effective thing they introduced. They probably had architecture and the concept of planning ahead and organizing communities and having government, like correct, in their eyes, the most effective governments for widespread prosperity and widespread with no war. I mean, there were decorative weapons and stuff, but there weren't any weapons of war or like evidence of bodies of humans killing each other on these islands that I know of. So he goes on, Colin Renfrew, he says the complexity of the construction is only comparable to Knossos on Crete for the same early period. So if we think about Crete, they must have been all run by the same government, or they were close enough together to where they shared the same architecture and the same know-how in running their island nation or their federation, whatever you want to call it. So again, that's very interesting. And Knossos is like one of the central cities of that island and it's been that way for a long time. Look at this picture right here. You can see that this is obviously a construction. And it's very well worn now, but in its heyday, it must have looked beautiful. The ministry added that the materials discovered, including marble and obsidian, show that the settlers were expert seamen and trade extended over a wide network reaching beyond the Cyclades. So again, yeah, that's a good conclusion, or a good hypothesis at the very least to make, because these people weren't keeping to themselves. They had riches. Their pottery has been found on other continents, Africa, like Egypt, like northern Africa, and God knows where else on the earth. Maybe even as far as China or modern day Russia or Eastern Europe or the Balkans. It's very, very interesting that they had this going. And again, this is only 5,000 or so years ago. Are we to believe that in the Neolithic it was so primitive that like there was no precursor to this? It just doesn't make sense that even if you give them 2,000 years to come up with that, it doesn't seem like you could get to that level with drainage pipes and all that stuff without having seen it in action first and seen it work, unless you were a survivor of a civilization that had that at some time in the past, and they were just so good at passing down that information and preserving it that they took a cue from them. And when I say they, I mean the Cyclades island nations, if you want to call it that. They must have taken a cue from that and implemented that into their system. I'm not saying that's what happened, but it with all the evidence and all the circumstances, and you're trying to connect dots and read between the lines here, that seems like a logical explanation, something like that. It's definitely better than it just springing up within a few centuries. I just don't buy that. So here are some more potsherds here. The co-director of the site, Michael Boyd, added that a unique feature of the site includes the fact that metallurgy played a critical role throughout the life of the settlement. So metallurgy, again, this is early Bronze Age, probably more than that when we're talking about the precursor to them, which was, I mentioned earlier, 6,000 years ago. There was evidence of Greek and Anatolian features in the same region, and they had metallurgy. Hunter-gatherers aren't gonna have the time in their day. Well, they had a lot of time, but they're not gonna have the inclination to go about discovering metallurgy. That just doesn't make any sense. So metallurgy itself is a humongous mystery, and it smells like it's esoteric and something that secret societies would hold close to their vest, or a learned group of people. Because if hunter-gatherers did that, then you would see it amongst all hunter-gatherer societies. If that were the case, if something like metallurgy just comes up out of it gets born out of the typical hunter-gatherer life, just like what do hunter-gatherers all have in common? They forage, they know how to craft stuff out of stone and wood and bow and arrows, probably, or projectiles. That's pretty much it. They don't have metallurgy. They if they do, then they must have learned it from someone somewhere. That's what I'm getting at. Anyway, its extent and scale proves a constant replenishing of raw materials from Western Cyclades and Attica, and social structure that trained and passed skills on to new generations. That's it. Social structure. How did they get that? That takes a long time to form by itself, or again, it was passed on. It was a meme, and that it was a culture. It was a meme passed on through their culture, and their culture, if you trace it back, it traces to Anatolia. And Anatolia, again, is where these civilizing figures come from. So a little bit about the project. So the fourth and last excavation period in the Keros and Axis Sea Roads project took place in September-October 2008. The 4-year project picked up from where the former excavation cycle ended in 2008. Yeah, so that's what I was talking about. So there was 2 or 3 different excavations. So this is very interesting stuff, guys. If you live in Greece or something and you're an archaeologist or you're interested, I would definitely look into trying to volunteer or get some field work here, because not only is it beautiful and it would probably double as a vacation for you, but there's probably so much stuff there that probably rivals that of Israel in terms of what they could find. Because although they've been working there for a while, it doesn't seem like there are a lot of resources put into excavating all of these islands. And also, if you're a marine archaeologist, this seems like a treasure trove just waiting to be found, because again, there must have been so much activity and there was extensive trade routes. They must have been traveling constantly all the time. They're a maritime culture, so who knows what you're going to find down there. So anyway, let me know what you guys think about this. I think this is super interesting. And again, it's although it's only 5,000 plus years ago, what they're tentatively dating everything to, you got to think about the precursors. How did they get there? Why would they go there? Why do they share all of these, like metallurgy and all of these what you would call achievements of civilization out of nowhere? So it just adds more and more layers to this mystery of how civilization got started and what happened in the wake of the Younger Dryas. So anyway, let me know what you guys think. Retweet this, share this, please. I love all the comments, and I love the growth that I'm seeing in the channel. It's mind-blowing. I can't believe I only started this less than a year ago, like 10 months ago, 9 months ago or something like that. About 10 months. So anyway, let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you guys later.